Okay. Good morning, everyone. So this morning, I'm going to address something that's been coming up for quite a number of people. We've been getting some messages, and it's usually at this point in the retreat. Sometimes we come face to face with fear. Um, there can be very deep fear that comes up as we start to loosen the bonds of the self structure when it's starting to give way, and yeah, it's like that conditioned self that's used to being in control. It starts to get nervous. It realizes it's loosening its grasp, or this, you could say this sense of I is starting to move from this character to the true I. And yeah, it's like the old pattern is somehow interrupted. And this this fear that comes up is really, when we talk about learning to die before you die, it's really this sort of going through this letting go process, and there's fear involved, um, and to me, once again, there's always a relative and absolute way of sort of moving through this until there isn't, until it's all one experience. But to me, the most direct, or the clearest way to deal with fear is to see who that fear belongs to. To really recognize and see that it's coming up within the conditioned self, and to just watch it, to remain equanimous with it, and just to inquire into who you are. Who is it that's watching this character going through this process, um, and and yet sometimes that the space for that kind of inquiry is not always available. Sometimes the charge of that fear is very strong as well. Um, and so I'm just gonna sort of dive into this in various different ways, and but in the big picture, I just want to say, when I was going through a lot of this on my own path, the teacher that I was working with, he considered it a good thing when the fear was coming up. It means that you're working correctly. It means that you're reaching the depths of your being, like the depths of the entanglement with the I thought. Um, and and for some people, the fear actually isn't as big of a thing. For some characters are holding on tighter, I guess, than others. And it's really, I like the analogy of the roller coaster. Like the fear. I've experienced many roller coasters, and actually had awakening experiences with roller coasters. It's actually a great way if you really want to, yeah, do an experiment. It's quite interesting. But we know, on a roller coaster, if you're hanging on, the energy is contracted. There's resistance and fear. Then there's not a sense of ease there. It's like you're just trying to survive. The character is trying to survive. But if we're able to let go, then that same energy that is the fear. When the energy is contracted within the self structure, that's the fear. And when we relax and can let go, just surrender to the experience, then that same energy is aliveness. It's quite beautiful. And so for me, I actually it was an interesting kind of teaching that I received on at Canada's Wonderland. Canada's Wonderland has these roller coasters, some of the biggest roller coasters in the world, actually, and they have names like Leviathan and Behemoth, and they're amazing. These huge roller coasters, and you're going up and up and up, and getting closer to the top, and you can feel in the body the fear building, and one of the things I realized, at the top of this one roller coaster, it really is, it was a perfect sort of encapsulation of the path of awakening, because the first time there was that flip, that figure ground reversal, where it's like I flipped into the witness, and it was the witness, or the like emptiness, that was riding this roller coaster, which it was actually peaceful. There wasn't a lot of fear. Like, the fear was within the phenomenal part. So when we jump into the witness, there's no fear. It's just sort of empty. So emptiness riding the roller coaster. But it's not really the way to ride a roller coaster. It's not the. There's another possibility, and so another time. So I got back onto it again, and the next time, it wasn't. It was like something gave way, and all the senses opened, and the energy opened, and the emptiness was there, but it was also the energy. It was actually, it became more of a non-dual experience, and it was like the energy, it was connected to the whole amusement park. It was like life itself, having this experience, and very difficult to describe, but full on, life, and the emptiness and the fullness together somehow. So the fear, is not separate from that energy. It's just simply, the contraction within the little self, and I've experienced that fear myself in meditation early on, when I was doing a lot of Vipassana meditation. There was stuff that actually, it went all the way back to childhood, where sometimes I would get these sort of night terrors, and it's like this primordial fear that it didn't even really have an object, but it would come up. And this came up in the meditation, and it's connected to like when the energy comes to this center, and not everybody can feel this energetically, but this is kind of what's happening energetically. The center of I is kind of the third eye area, and when the energy moves beyond that to the crown, when in order to move to the crown chakra, when that energy gives way, that sense of I starts to give way, that's quite often when we start to experience this fear. If that little I is clinging, if it's holding on. So, that for me, that experience at the beginning was kind of terrifying. But now, the energy just goes to the crown, and it's just like a little movement within the self structure, and it's actually blissful. It's kind of like when you can you can go into water, submerge yourself in water, and if it's shocking, it's cold, maybe it's unfamiliar, and we can sort of contract against that, or we can just sort of let go into it. And to me it's sort of like that. It's just and our little self structure can get used to this letting go process. Once it's been through it a number of times, then it knows that it doesn't mean oblivion for it. It just means it's moving, the conditioned self is just moving from the driver's seat to the back seat. So that conditioned self, as they say, it makes a good servant but a poor master. So we don't we don't kill the servant. So it's I sometimes this using words like die before you die, it does generate fear for some people, and the character will hear that, and it's maybe not the best wording, because it's not really a death. It is a death in a sense. It can feel like a death, but it's just a letting go, or like a letting go of control. And so it's good, I think, to reassure that part of the mind, to reassure the character that it's still going to be part of the team, and even when it's in the back seat, and something else is coming forth, when it goes for that journey, actually, whatever journey is unfolding there, it over time, the character will realize that what's being offered is actually better than anything that it could do on its own. When it's steering the ship, it's predictable, it's familiar, but when it moves to the back seat, it's exciting. It's the journey becomes much more interesting. So, so when we talk about fear, there's and I think I may have mentioned this already. I can't remember if I did, but I'm going to go into it a little bit more deeply here. So, hope and fear come into being together. The conditioned self is always, it's actually part of this larger pattern of craving and aversion, hope and fear. So the craving, the wanting, the hoping, hoping that I can get something, hoping that something will happen in the future. So it's always a projection into the future, and a wanting, and the fear is also, it's the same thing, but it's just the aversion, hoping something doesn't happen, or not wanting something to happen in the future. So the hope and fear are just part of this, the part of the five skandhas, part of the pattern that is in play, and this is really the root of where the I thought is really strongest, is with hope and fear, and it's part of it just is as it is. So it's not a problem. It's not that we um, need to change that. This is part of the larger pattern of expansion and contraction in the universe. The in-breath and the out-breath, the yin and yang, the Shakti and Shiva. This is just how the matrix operates. Um, so so really, the dualistic mind. Um, when we see the fear for what it is, as just this part of the dualistic mind, we see it as just the operation of these skandhas just doing their thing. And if we can realize that to be empty of self, then we just see it as a pattern. We see fear for what it is. It's like the wizard in the Wizard of Oz. There's this scary facade, but there's really nothing to it. There's nothing behind it. It's like the snake and the rope example again. You fear the snake, but when you discover that the snake is a rope, then there's nothing to it. And that's what happens when we realize who we are. It's like, oh yeah, I'm not that character. So when we abandon the mind, when we abandon that conditioned mind, when we stop believing or identifying with those thoughts, then we start to abandon both hope and fear. And I like to sometimes refer to the Dante's Inferno and the sign that is above hell. As I think it's the main character. I can't remember. I think it's Virgil leading one of the characters into hell. Sorry, it slips my mind, but it says, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." So in order to get through hell, and to me, hell is simply the ego structure. The ego is hell. So if you want to move through that, abandon all hope, and abandon all fear as well. We abandon both hope and fear. It's really the same mechanism. If we want to come out of that hell, if we want to come out of identification with this conditioned self. Joseph Campbell talked about this. He wrote about the hero's journey, and there's a lot of a lot of things in our world still to this day. A lot of our media, a lot of our a lot of our stories, in some ways have regressed from the past. A lot of the Greek stories and these archetypal myths were very much like the hero's journey, which is it's reflecting really more the truth of what is going on, the truth of coming to know ourselves. But a lot of our paradigms and our analogies these days have been reduced to something that is just very primitive. This simple stories about good conquering evil. One side is good, the other's bad, and light conquering dark. And we do get some movies and stories that have more depth to them, but they're still fairly rare. Movies like the Matrix, or more recently the Dune series, or even the early Star Wars movies had a very sort of hero's journey aspect to them, where it wasn't so clear cut, about light conquering dark, but it's more about the one going through the journey, coming to face themselves, to see themselves, to awaken. And a lot of these ancient stories and teachings had an incredible depth to them, an incredible understanding of the human condition. Like the Bhagavad Gita is a good example. In that story, the story of Arjuna being in this sort of untenable situation where he had to go into battle. There's this big epic battle going on with against some of his own relatives were on the other side, and he's in this situation, and fear is coming up. He's struggling with this very real, very human situation. What's the way out of this? How does he choose sides? It seems that he has to fight against one side, but he doesn't want to fight against his own relatives, and he doesn't want to. At the same time, he doesn't want his side to get wiped out. If he doesn't fight, they'll get wiped out. So what is the solution? How do we get out of this this bind? In the Bhagavad Gita, the metaphor or the teaching is given by Krishna, and Krishna represents our awakened self. So Krishna, it's never, the truth, the way through is never about just this or that. It's never just choosing one side or the other. So Krishna's teaching was to, let me go into the battle for you. Let awakened consciousness fight in your place, or go in your place. Allow the character. In other words, allow the character to play its part. Play the game fully, but don't be identified with that character. Just let the Krishna consciousness or the Christ consciousness, your true nature, be there, be that sense of I, and then energy will unfold. Life will unfold from there, and this show, this game will carry on. Coming back to the hero's journey, there's this sort of alchemy that happens. The hero is going through this sort of evolutionary transformation. And I'm going to share a quote here. This is from Joseph Campbell, and he sums this up really nicely. This is about the hero's journey. So he says, on our hero's journey, on our hero's journey, where we had thought to find an abomination, we shall find God. And where we had thought to slay another, we shall slay ourselves. And where we had thought to travel outward, we shall come to the center of our own existence. So it's a very beautiful way of kind of summing it up. So the very thing that we fear, we like the example I've used before. It's like in the original Star Wars movie, Luke is he's on that planet with Yoda. He's learning to become a Jedi. He's learning to find himself essentially, and he goes into a cave, and the little teacher says, and he goes into this dark cave, and the teacher Yoda says, you won't need that lightsaber with you. You don't need to take a weapon into this cave. It's like he understands. You're just going to go to battle with yourself, but of course he still takes it in there with him, and he comes face to face with his greatest fear, which is Darth Vader, and then in that scene, the mask comes off, and he sees himself. It's him. I have another quote here from Carl Jung as well. He says that the hero's main feat is to overcome the monster of darkness. It is the long hoped for and expected triumph of consciousness over the unconscious. So that's a very, very powerful insight. The triumph of consciousness over the unconscious. So all of this mechanism of the skandhas, it's just what's running in the unconscious, and there's so much connected to that. Jung talks about the collective unconscious. So there's our own personal unconscious, but then there's a part of us that is connected to everything. So this this hero's journey, it's facing and integrating these unconscious parts of the psyche. There's another one from Carl Jung here. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. So again, so much of spirituality that we see out there, it's about becoming good and realizing the light and light conquering the darkness. But it's a true evolution. That true alchemy is the reconciling. It's again the Heart Sutra. Form is exactly emptiness. Emptiness is exactly form. When we see what is visible, what has come forth as this dream, we see it as empty. We see the light and the darkness as one. There's some traditions that use darkness meditation as part of their path, and we have actually on the property here at the Samadhi Center a little darkness hut, and when we go into the darkness, like there's certain Tibetan traditions and yogic and shamanic traditions where, we go, literally into the dark. It's not just a metaphor. Um, and it's kind of like going into the cave to meet oneself. So you shut out the sun and the moon, the duality, the circadian rhythms. These are the control mechanisms for duality, and something happens in that. After a number of days in the dark, usually 3.5 to 4 days, something starts to change, and there's sometimes endogenous DMT is released, and we start to see in a different way, and there's no more darkness and light. You could say in that space, that non-dual space, there's only luminous emptiness. There's no more awake and asleep. There's just this. It's like a waking dream that goes on forever. So we've in our society, a lot of our traditions have sort of demonized one half of what is. They've demonized that, the spiral, the serpent, the feminine, or the manifested. Christianity is notorious for this. This idea of the fall. To me, there's an incredible beauty and message in the original Bible teachings. The truth is actually encrypted in there, but it's been the whole thing has been taken sort of literally, and it's become something in our society that creates division and fear, and to me what is the fall? It's an unwillingness to accept some part of what is, and it's like a part of the one splits off and dissociates. It's a split from the one. The fall, Lucifer. At one time, he, the story goes, he was like the most beautiful angel. Very, very close to God, but there was a split, and there's that saying, the ego would rather rule in hell than be a servant in heaven. So to me, this just represents the ego. It's my will, not God's will. They're as if they're two separate things. It's believing that there's this separation and the experience of that. So the ego, it doesn't want to serve. It wants its own way. So this is another, just a metaphor for, the I thought coming into being. So we all have, this part of us. We all have the Luciferic part of us. It's just a question of, where is the sense of I? Where is the sense of I? Is there an identification? So, the phenomena that is unfolding isn't a problem. The power of that energy, the spiral, the serpent power, all of that has been so demonized. You know, people fighting wars and burning, you know, witches at the stake and all of that because of their fear of that power, which is just, you know, it's just the power of nature. It's the power of becoming. It's life itself, you know. So we don't want to go to battle with that power. You know, who is going to battle with that power? You know, it's always the ego itself. You know, there were many traditions that embraced that. You know, the ancient Egyptian tradition, the you know, really old traditions. Many of them were sort of sun-focused, and you know, they were about evolution and growth, life represented by, you know, in the Egyptian tradition, they had the little scarab beetle, which is moving from the moon to the sun. You know, there's always a little sun where it's going to, and this was meant to represent the game of Maya, you know, or the game of Leela, the game of the gods, you know, that we're playing. But somehow we've forgotten all that, and we've forgotten that it's a game. We've forgotten who we are in it. And it's like we've stepped onto a stage, you know, to play a part, and all of a sudden we think we are the character now. We've forgotten that this is a play, and we take it seriously. And then when you take it seriously, you know, you think you are that character, and the character is threatened, then there's fear. It's no longer freedom. It's no longer an expression or a play. Then it becomes, you know, suffering. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so this, you know, the serpent, you know, in its archetypal form, is nature, wisdom. You know, the wisdom of Sophia, the spiral, the logos, manifestation. So we don't want to slay that serpent. We want to integrate it. You know, we don't. You know, the hero's journey is not to slay the dragon. It's we want to, you know, ride the dragon. You know, it's like the Kuan Yin figure. You know, or these you know, these really ancient depictions of the Buddha that you find in you know, these really ancient temples, or the you know, the images of Patanjali. Quite often they're surrounded, like if you go to places like Angkor Wat, you'll see the Buddha or the awakened being surrounded by nagas. So you know, the nagas are these serpents, and this is something that is really missing from modern iconography. We don't see it anymore, and it's a shame because it's a beautiful teaching in those images. You know, you have the awakened being, and then these nagas or serpents are, you know, they're representing all the different dimensions of the unconscious, and they're there around that being awake. You know, they're not going crazy and just operating on their own. They're there. They're sort of all one. You know, they're integrated. So this is our, you know, this is integrating. This is what Carl Jung is talking about when he says, you know, making the unconscious conscious. You know, these are like little bosses. You know, little parts of us that you know, when they're unconscious, they sometimes they have their own agenda, and they can They take us for a little journey sometimes unconsciously. We find ourselves acting out, these unconscious actions, repeating unconscious patterns in our life until we integrate these parts of ourselves. Carl Jung would say, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will rule our life, and we say, it's fate. We use words like fate or karma, but when we make it conscious, then it's just part of us. It's not just happening. So this is our this is a different dimension. So it's not like when we awaken, it's like we become free from the suffering. We become free from the character, but also, after awakening, we're still here. We're awake, but in the dream, but there are other possibilities. So, there's freedom from, freedom from the character, but there's also freedom to explore, freedom to evolve, to grow this avatar in unique ways. And every being is like a, it's like we have these latent possibilities within the self structure. The Kundalini is our evolutionary potential. The chakras, we develop these different parts of the self structure, and this is the human journey. So if we, at the beginning, it might just be about survival, protecting the physical organism, and then we learn to expand, a little bit out of, just this sense of me as this little being that needs to survive. Maybe we develop relationships and a family, and we explore the spiral of life, and we expand our sphere of compassion to encompass greater and greater aspects of ourself. So maybe we explore, manifesting in this world. We explore maybe a business or doing something, and we connect with more and more, greater and greater sphere, and the sense of I expands as we continue up this spiral. The sense of I will continue to expand. This is part of the path, until we, that energy is realized as connected to everyone, everything. It's all us. It's all you. Yeah. So maybe just offer one more thing. There's an analogy that's used in many different traditions, the chariot analogy. So you find, the chariot analogy in the Bhagavad Gita, but it goes back to really ancient roots. The Zoroastrians used a similar analogy. And this chariot being pulled by horses really represents sort of the totality of the soul's journey, or the, whatever it is that we are. It represents all these different parts of us. So the chariot is, in the Bhagavad Gita, the chariot is being pulled by these horses that represent desires. The charioteer is the consciousness, the mind consciousness, vijnana, and we learn to drive this chariot. We by balancing the horses, we get them going in our direction. So in other words, if we're not conscious of the horses, they're just kind of doing their own thing. We have no connection to them. Then our chariot is just going to go wherever it's going to go. But if we make them conscious, you could see the horses as the skandhas, the 5 skandhas. So we make them conscious, and the energy, as in the Taoist teaching, energy follows consciousness. So we learn to harness these horses, and Plato uses a chariot analogy as well, and I love sometimes when you take multiple traditions, you can they're like little different lenses to sort of bring bring the whole picture into focus. So Plato says there are these 2 horses, a black and a white horse. So a slightly different analogy, pulling this chariot, and he calls them eros and thumos. So eros is your desires, similar to the Bhagavad Gita. But this analogy is really interesting. So you have the one horse, the black horse, that's your desires, but then there's the white horse, which is sort of that part of us that wants to go higher. So this is that that evolutionary force that we were talking about. The part that wants to get closer to God. The part of us when we we study the sutras, when we learn poetry, we elevate ourselves, in some way. It's like we're looking for the truth through, so this white horse is, you could say, more like the spiritual part of the self structure, and it's so it wants to go up, and the black horse wants to go down, more into the material, into the physical, it's eros, it's the sensation and the pleasure of life, and it's important, in this analogy, it's not that the black horse is bad and the white horse is good. They're both pulling the chariot. You need both horses in order, in balance, for the chariot to go in your direction. So it's not about killing off the black horse and getting rid of desire. It's about making it conscious. This is what's pulling your chariot in this game. These desires are here. You're not, you try and get rid of that, then you lose half your power. And the same with the white horse. The white horse, if it has too much power, if we ignore, the physical and the sensory and all of that, then we can go too much into the spiritual, and again the chariot will go off track. And so it's really about balancing these horses, and so we don't want to allow either one to go out of balance. If they do, then you've got a problem. And if you're just concerned about spirituality and you neglect your body, then your chariot isn't much good. It's going to be. I mean, there'll be a particular, experience in that. But yeah, to go through the journey of life, you want to balance the two. So, yeah. So yeah, I think I'm probably going to end it there. I'm just going to see. I think I have a few more little quotes I'll leave you with here. Just 1 second. So I'll just leave you with a quote from St. John of the Cross. Um, and I'm remembering it from memory right now, so I may be a little bit off, but yeah. So he says, to find the truth that you know not, you must go by the path that you know not. So, in this chariot, this vessel that we're living in, the knowing part of us, really only knows the past. If we go by the path that we know, the path that we've learned, then we're just going to repeat the same thing. We're just going to see the same territory over and over. But if we take the path that is unknown, the don't know mind, the beginner's mind, then we can explore. Then this chariot can take us to places that are new, more, more in alignment with this evolutionary unfolding that is possible. And yeah, so I think I'll end it there. And yeah, so, thank you. So we'll just take a 5-minute break and then come back for meditation.